Welcome to today's Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled you're here. We are jumping right in today because we're looking at a world in total transition, basically mapping out the geopolitical shockwaves of August 2026. We're going to take a journey from the really gritty tactical warfare that's completely reshaping Eastern Europe right now, all the way over to the deep global psychology of how everyday people are managing to adapt to it all. It is a fascinating sequence of events, and we have a lot of ground to cover.
So here is our roadmap for today. We'll be looking at 1. Ukraine's robot army. 2. Striking the shadow fleet. 3. Middle East diplomatic shifts. 4. The global economic warning. And finally, number 5, Finland's paradox of happiness.
Section 1. Ukraine's new robot army. Let's start with this first major ripple, the futuristic, tactical reality of ground combat happening right now.
50,000. Just let that number sink in for a second. That massive figure represents Ukraine's unmanned ground vehicle production goal by the end of 2026. In the spring of 2026 alone, their Ministry of Defense ordered 25,000 of these units. You know, this isn't science fiction anymore. This is a very real-time shift in how warfare is actually conducted, moving heavily toward unmanned ground operations.
And these robots are taking over an absolutely staggering and dangerous variety of tasks. You've got models with names like Stow One-Eyed and Termit doing everything from evacuating wounded troops to deploying kamikaze attacks. The reports even detail the 93rd Mechanized Brigade deploying a robot that is literally armed with a flamethrower. There's another highly decorated model, the DevDroid TW-12.7, which is this tracked robot armed with a heavy machine gun that reportedly fought off troops for 45 days straight. The sheer versatility we're seeing is incredible. But of course, this impressive tech introduces immense logistical friction on the ground. Ukrainian forces are flooded with about 550 different robot models coming from 270 different domestic manufacturers. As this officer perfectly spells out, there is just zero standardization. Without a unified system, scaling this whole robot revolution remains a massive logistical hurdle.
Section 2. Striking the shadow fleet. Moving away from the front lines, let's examine how Ukraine is expanding its tactical reach to hit Russia's economic engines.
Think about these distances for a moment. Overnight strikes recently hit 2 major Russian oil refineries, which brilliantly illustrates the vast reach of Ukraine's recent deep strike capabilities. The Bajnev Novoil facility is more than 1,300 kilometers behind the front lines, and the Slavnest Janos refinery is 700 kilometers from the border. We are talking about a massive expansion in long-range reach overnight.
But these strikes aren't just happening on land. Ukrainian forces have also targeted the Black Sea, specifically going after what is known as the Shadow Fleet. Basically, these are vessels used to bypass Western oil sanctions to finance the war effort. President Volodymyr Zelensky describes striking these ships as long-range sanctions. So instead of using traditional financial restrictions, they're aiming kinetic strikes directly at Moscow's energy revenues.
Section 3. Middle East diplomatic shifts. Let's see how these ripples extend into geopolitical shockwaves and some major diplomatic pivots in the Middle East.
Now, the stakes of a potential U.S.-Iran deal are absolutely enormous. A full 20%, 1/5 of the entire world's oil supply, flows right through the Strait of Hormuz. Recently, President Donald Trump announced that regional allies agreed on the basic parameters of a deal to end the U.S.-Iran conflict, actually canceling planned airstrikes to secure this specific waterway. The economic weight of that 20% slice really cannot be overstated.
And here we see the core of that announcement. The emerging agreement demands the immediate and total opening of the strait, alongside an end to Iran's nuclear threat. According to the reporting, this comes after consultations with regional allies, including Saudi Arabia's Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who expressed serious concerns over Gulf energy infrastructure. It is absolutely critical to note, though, mediators are still working on this. A formal agreement remains unsigned, and Iran's defense minister stated they remain on high alert.
Simultaneously, we're seeing shifting diplomatic dynamics unfold between the U.S. and its closest Middle Eastern ally, Israel. According to a Wall Street Journal report, relations are fraying a bit as the U.S. pushes for de-escalation while Israel continues its military campaigns. This quote captures a tense phone call where Trump told Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to stop blowing up buildings in Lebanon, which really reflects a pattern of strained communications over military strategy.
Section 4. The global economic warning. Now, let's zoom out to the macro level to see how all these overlapping geopolitical crises are directly impacting the global economy. So, what does this all mean for the global economy? Well, Bank of Finland Governor Olli Rehn offers a pretty stark warning. The energy crisis is not over, and global uncertainty is exceptionally high right now. The risks to economic growth are tilted to the downside, meaning growth is weakening. But on the flip side, risks to inflation are tilted to the upside. And when you combine weakening growth with rising inflation, you get the classic first signs of a stagflationary shock. If global hostilities keep up, energy prices could easily spike again, making this threat very, very real.
Section 5. Finland's Paradox of Happiness. Finally, we transition from global economics to a really fascinating look at human psychology, exploring how people actually manage to adapt to this era of high anxiety. 9 years running. Despite literally everything we just covered, the global turmoil, the drone strikes, shifting alliances, the stagflation warnings, Finland has remarkably retained its status as the world's happiest country for almost a decade, according to the World Happiness Report.
But the statistical whiplash here is pretty crazy. On paper, these numbers absolutely do not add up for a nation ranking #1 in happiness. They're sitting at 10% unemployment and 89% debt to GDP ratio, and they are deep into their third consecutive year of economic stagnation. So how on earth is a country with a struggling economy and a looming global energy crisis remaining the happiest place on earth?
While this brings us to what commentators call the dark explanation for their happiness. As happiness researcher Frank Martella points out, Finns actually view themselves as introverted and melancholic. Their secret isn't this active, energetic pursuit of joy or wealth or sunshine. Instead, it relies on a very quiet acceptance of hardship. As one source perfectly put it, if it's dark, cold, hard, or quiet, let it be.
And it really comes down to these three pillars. The Finnish people thrive because their happiness is built on a baseline sense of security, deep societal trust in one another, and this steady rock of contentment. They've essentially learned to be happy despite the darkness, finding stability in these three core steps even when facing deep economic hardship and surrounding global unrest.
So I'll leave you with this final thought to ponder. As we navigate through all the ripple effects of 2026, from those 50,000 ground robots in Ukraine to the really delicate balance of Middle East diplomacy and the looming shadow of stagflation, perhaps we all need a little bit of that Finnish contentment. How will you adapt to a world in transition? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope diving into this source material has brought some clarity to today's really complex headlines. Stay curious, stay focused, and I will see you next time.